Sharon Gillenwater, welcome to Build to Sell Radio.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. You've got a real interesting story. It starts with Boardroom Insiders. So let's start there. Describe this business as if I were a layperson. What did you do at Boardroom Insiders?
Boardroom Insiders was essentially a digital platform, which is, a website that you log into, and it provided in-depth information on executive decision makers at large companies. Like we're talking about the Fortune 500.
Kind of like a Hoover's back in the day. Wasn't that Hoover's or kind of like that?
Yeah, I loved Hoovers. I was in sales in the 90s and I loved Hoovers. I used it all the time. And in fact, some of the people who worked at Hoovers were instrumental in what I did, giving me advice. And one of them turned out to be a vendor of mine later when he went off and started something else. So you kind of nailed it with the comparison. But instead
how'd you get the data? How did you get the data on executives? How did you find out who they were, where they lived, all that stuff?
The hard way. I mean, we didn't delve into where they lived, like their house, but we placed them in whatever state or city that they were working out of. It was very difficult, and we had a little internal catchphrase for ourselves when we were starting. It's like, we're going to win because nobody wants to do what we do. At the time that we created it in around 2008 to 2010, the data scraping and automation was coming into play. And so you had a lot of problems with the existing contact and insight databases on the market because they were just woefully inaccurate. And I saw this because I was doing this kind of investigation for big tech at the time as a consultant. And they would give me the logins to these databases and say, go find these executives and then do some more research on them. And I thought, man, they're paying a lot for this database, but then everything you get out of it, you still have to go to the open web to confirm because it's so outdated. You'd find out, oh, this person hasn't been the CEO for 6 months. Who's the new person? And you have to back into it that way. So when we collected our data, we weren't using any paid databases. We were using the open web, SEC filings, corporate websites, LinkedIn.
Oh my Lord.
So
that sounds hard.
It was very hard. And that's, I think, one reason why we were successful, because we were doing the hard and necessary work that our clients needed. But as from a competition standpoint, nobody else really wanted to do that. So our competition was mainly individual consultants or corporate librarians who would do this work on behalf of the sales teams within their company, or just people in marketing who would roll up their sleeves and do the work themselves. So that's the kind of solution we brought to market. It wasn't easy, but it caught on.
What was the business model? Did you charge per seat or per enterprise? What was that like?
Well, that's a very interesting question that I could talk a long time about, because we were forced into this B2B SaaS category. Because when you're selling into marketing organizations, they purchase a lot of subscriptions to B2B SaaS, software as a service platform. And so we were forced into a seat subscription model, even though that really wasn't how we delivered content. We delivered content through a database, but there was also a custom request element to it. It was a hybrid. So we've got a database you can log into and pull down a bunch of stuff. But if the records that you need are not in there, like say you're selling into small hospital chains in the South, we didn't have that because that's not part of the Fortune 500, but we would create those records for you upon request and turn them around in 2 days. So we had to incorporate an element of kind of custom request pricing into our subscription pricing. And the first thing we thought was, well, the customer can just have a credit card saved in our system and pay for that as they go. No, they can't, because they couldn't tolerate any budget ambiguity. Even an Oracle, a Cisco, VMware, these big tech companies were selling into, IBM, Amazon Web. They couldn't tolerate budget ambiguity. So they needed to know, what is the annual contract? How many of these custom requests do we get? And what kind of access do we get? So that turned it into much more of a conversation with our sales team. Well, how many accounts are you targeting? And what roles within those accounts are you targeting? And we would do our best guess estimate of how many new custom requests they were going to need in a year and build our pricing that way, But when the pricing was presented, it was like this many seats and this many custom requests.
Interesting. And so that enabled you to capture both the, I would imagine, the slightly more commoditized business, i.e. who are the Fortune 500, CMOs of these companies, and the much less commoditized, who are the regional managers of these small hospitals in the Southeast.
Exactly. And I'd like to add, it wasn't just like contact information we were providing. It was like current business initiatives pulled from earnings calls,
Hmm.
leadership style, if they'd ever said anything on a podcast or in an interview about that, hobbies and interests. We'd look at their Instagram and, see
Wow.
what are they doing? So we were trying to create a record that was rich with both personal kind of work style and company specific functional initiatives that align with their role so that it would equip our customers to have very strong business conversations with these people. And so what we would
So
hear
cool.
regularly is like someone would say, I've been trying to reach this CIO for a year and they've ignored me. And I took one little hook from your profile of them and they got back to me in 5 minutes. That's the goal.
Hey, it's John. Look, if you're building to sell, I want to let you know about a resource you may find helpful. It's called the Value Builder Score, and it will evaluate your company in the same way that acquirers will look at your business. It'll give you a score on the 8 factors that drive the value of your company. You'll also get an estimate of value and things you could do to improve that value over time, whether you want to sell now or in a decade from now. Knowing how the movie ends, I think, puts you in the catbird's seat, gives you all kinds of negotiating leverage. So it's available exclusively through a Value Builder advisor. So talk to your advisor. If you don't have one yet, you can go to valuebuilder.com/score. Let us know what industry you're in, and we will connect you with an advisor who specializes in companies like yours. Just go to valuebuilder.com/score. That's awesome. That's awesome. And how did you finance this business? Like, did you raise money? Did you have partners? Like, what was that like?
Oh, it was brutal. Like I said, I got the idea while I was working as a consultant for big tech, and I had a ton of work with these companies and was working like crazy. And I just kept doing it while I was building the company. So I continued to consult for 6 years after starting the company and, doing both and making that money so I could pay my bills and support my family while Boardroom had virtually no revenue. I did need to build the database, a proper, enterprise database. And so I took 200,000 from an angel investor and, used that to build the product. So I had an initial angel investor and then we did another small raise of like an additional 75. So it was like 200-ish that I raised from 3 people. And they were all people that either my business partner or I had very close relationships with.
And who was your business partner? And like, how did you guys divvy up responsibilities and
Yeah,
equity and all that stuff?
he joined 2 years in. So for 2 years, I had the database and I was using it basically as a tool for my consulting business. If someone would say, oh, help us get into, Singular Wireless at the time, it's like
Sure.
I had
Yeah.
all these executives in my database and I tune those up and give them the information. So about, a year in, I realized I was stuck in terms of being able to really productize this thing and sell subscriptions. And I didn't know why I was stuck because I didn't have enough experience to know. So I just started calling people. I said, I'm going to call someone every day for 30 days and just tell them what I'm doing, tell them why I want to talk to them specifically and ask them for advice. And so I did that. And one call led to another call, led to another, and it eventually led to my business partner. Actually, another entrepreneur had built an industry research product and sold it to Hoover's D&B. And so my partner, as part of that sale, had to do an earnout at Hoover's D&B. So he was working there and wanted to do something else. And so I connected with him and I flew out to meet with him in South Carolina, instantly hit it off. I thought, I want this guy with me. But he took like another 9 months to decide. He calls me the swashbuckler. I'm super decisive and my decisions are usually good. I don't make that many mistakes, but he is very cautious. And that was the first sign that this is a great match. I'm much more impulsive, go with my gut. And he's like, wait, let's slow down here and think about what we're doing.
Is this Bobby Martin at First Research?
No, but Bobby is the one who referred me to Lee Demby. So
okay, yeah,
Lee worked for Bobby, and Bobby was a fantastic advisor. And in fact, I think I can say this: Bobby put a little money in because it was, he's betting on Lee, who he knows, and he was
for sure.
Bobby understood what I was doing because it was really similar to First Research, except instead of industry research, it was people research.
Yeah. So we had Bobby on the show, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe longer, about the sale of First Research, and obviously, that experience that he had working at Dun & Bradstreet, which sounds very similar, and I feel like echoes of that here for sure. And Lee was, I think, a partner of his or a friend of his at First Research. So that all makes kind of sense to me.
Yeah, Lee was one of the original sales people at First Research and did very, very well there. And Bobby, I talked to Bobby all the time, and he was so supportive. And, he would call me. He'd like call me up, what's going on, and he would say, Sharon, I don't care if you have to mortgage your house. Like he didn't like the fact that I was consulting while I was trying to build this. He thought it was holding me back. And so he would just always would check on me. And he said, Lee can help you with the sales, but he's a partner. He's more than a sales lead. He's a partner. And I found a business partner that I didn't even know I needed, but it was absolutely the right decision. And it worked out beautifully. We were great partners. And in fact,
Sorry, go ahead.
In fact, Lee is advising me at Executive IQ. Lee is off doing something else, so he couldn't join me again, but he's advising us.
Oh, interesting. And how did you guys share the equity? Because it was your business, your clients, you did the first proof of concept. Like, that's got to be worth something. Did he buy in? How did you divvy up the equity?
I think in the end, he had like 28% or something. I think we started at 25. And he put in some money. But then, Lee was absolutely critical to the business. There's no way I could have done this without him. And so at one point I thought, well, I wish I had more equity to give him. And we had these shares that were earmarked for employees, but we did most of our hiring in South Carolina and nobody asked for equity. So we never gave any. We did do phantom equity later because we did want everyone to get a bonus when we sold, and we had a feeling we were going to sell. But at one point when I was like, I wish I could give Lee more equity, like we just took that equity and, that was for him. So he went up to about 28%. And I was at 57. And then we had Michael, who was the original angel. He always wanted to stay at 10. I don't know why. And he forgot later that he ever said that, because in the end, he's like, how much do I have? Like, because Michael, my angel, like, it's funny, someone invests, and he had just exited his first company when he invested, but then he went on to do all these other amazing things. He's now a public company CEO. So by the time we exited, like, he was not like obsessing about that money because he has way more money. So right before we sold, he's like, and how much do I have?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. And it sounds like the investors, including Lee and Michael, maybe they weren't doing a formal discounted cash flow analysis. It was more like friends of friends and kind of thumb in the air saying, yeah, okay, sure. Like, I'll give you a little bit of money for a piece of the action, but it wasn't sophisticated valuation that
not at all. Not at all. In fact, we did convertible notes, and they converted their notes after 10 years, which was like 6 months before we sold. So,
Hmm.
we didn't pay interest on those for a long time because of our cash flow, because our slow ramp. And so, they just said, pay us interest when you can. So once we really started generating a lot of cash, which we did really well once we got going, it took us like 8 years. We started paying that interest back. So we were square by the time we finally sold on all of those things.
So remind me how a convertible note works. This is where they'll give you money, and in theory, there's an interest rate. They're lending you money.
Yes.
Well, there's an interest rate that you can pay or choose not to pay, and that effectively builds up over time, the interest owed, and at some
Yes.
point in the future, they can choose to convert that
That's
debt
right.
into equity. Got it.
That's
Got it.
right. And
And
they were 10-year convertible notes. So the timing just worked out perfectly. So we sent them an email in May of 2021. Hey, your notes are converting this month. And by the way, we're in an M&A process, or we're going to, yeah, we didn't start the M&A process actually until, started interviewing firms in July, started the process in September. So, they were on notice that we were getting ready to get started. So it was good timing.
And remind me how it works with a convertible note. So you've got this interest building up. So this
Yeah.
effectively this balance building up. Then when you go to convert them from debt into equity, you have to pay that that outstanding balance of interest
Yes.
is
Yes.
also converted into equity. Is that correct? In addition to the
It
principal?
can be converted into equity, but what we chose to do is just pay the interest back once we had the cash flow. So by the
Okay.
time we converted the notes, we had been paying them interest for a couple of years, I think, like paying off that balance.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. So at that point, it was just the original equity
Yes.
converting into what, and you were converting it into equity. How did you put a value on the business at that time, pre-exit, for the purposes of valuing those shares?
It was based on, I think our original, I may not really know, but I think it was based on our original cap table because even though we had convertible notes, we still had like this person has this percentage, right? And we
Hmm.
never modified that because we never took any more investment. So it just converted into a percentage. So when we sold, they got that percentage after fees, after like
I
the
see.
M&A
Okay.
fees. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. And you mentioned that, with Lee coming on, you started to have more of an appetite to sell the business. Walk me through your journey from, hey, this is sort of a tool I'm using in my consulting, to we're building an asset that I want to sell. Like, was there something that triggered that, or something you learned, or something what happened?
So I always had this vision that I thought I'm going to do one of two things. I'll build this thing and then I can just sit in my pajamas while people buy this stuff online. I thought it was like a retail site. People are going to buy these records, right? Well, no, that's not how it works. And so that was one of the reasons that I started reaching out to all these people. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm stuck. So when Lee and I started talking, even before we officially partnered up, it was very, he's been through this before. He worked for a SaaS company, so he knew more on the kind of exit front and the business model front than I did.
Mhm.
So we discussed all these things, we talked about it, and I learned a lot from him. And then we also discussed our goals as people for this business, right? Because it was important to me that we share values and we're on the same page with what the end game is. And so talking to him, I elevated my goals in terms of like, wow, maybe we could sell this thing someday. He's done it with First Research. He's gone through that. So maybe we could do that with Boardroom Insiders. And he just knew a lot more about all of that than I did. So, for example, he's like, we have to have an ARR model, annual recurring revenue, because that's what these companies sell on multiples of. So I knew what ARR was, and I knew that I wanted to sell subscriptions, but I didn't realize how important it was to keep contractually your revenue in those buckets, like because of our kind of custom element where people can request records, or I would bend over backwards for my customers. Like a lot of times they get the information and say, this is great, but I don't know what to do with it. So I would do a whole consulting project. I would design their whole event strategy for them and do that in slides, and they would pay us for that. So Lee was always like, come on, we got to get everything over. So it was this really great partnership because I would do anything to get those customers seeing value. And a lot of times that involved like dragging them up the hill to see the view. Like, this is what this is all about. This is what you can do with it. Where he would be like, okay, as long as that's leading to a subscription, because we need ARR. So we discussed all of those things. And between the two of us, we said, okay, this is either going to be like, there are two outcomes, both good. We could just start throwing off so much cash that we can just pay ourselves really well and just keep it going and have a nice, what people call lifestyle business, although I hate that term. And then he said, or we could get it to where we can actually sell it. Both of those outcomes would be solid. And we just didn't know if we'd get to the exit. We just didn't know because of the heavy kind of custom element. It's our tool was not that scalable. So, we didn't know. We didn't know until about 2019 when people started sniffing around like that exit could be a possibility for us. And then when in 2020, our business really doubled, because if you think of what we enabled executive to executive engagement. And executives, instead of traveling all day to go to 2 meetings, suddenly they were in their homes having 12 meetings a day. So they needed fingertip ready access, intel on who they were meeting with. So our business, our company doubled in 2020. And that's when we decided like, we need to start looking at an exit. And I can talk for hours about why that was at that time, but I don't want to get into the weeds if you don't want me to.
Yeah, no, I would love to. That's what we're all about, is the weeds here in the show. So
well,
what was it about?
We had a really hard time with our sales funnel, and sales and marketing funnel, I guess you call it. We had a hard time generating net new opportunities. We still were growing, but it was all by referral or our customers moving on to another tech company. And we were really concentrated in big tech. We were concerned about a big tech crash. And that's one reason why we wanted to sell, and we did it at the perfect time. But, we tried the kind of conventional HubSpot demand gen strategy, and we did everything they told us to do. But here's the thing. We were not like a mass market SaaS for all of B2B. Not all of B2B needs to sell into high-level executive decision makers. Big tech does, because those deals are sometimes 9 figures, right? So the CFO, the CEO wants to know, what is this and what is it going to do for us? But I just think now, having some distance from it, we were trying to apply kind of a marketing methodology that all these other B2B SaaS were using that really just didn't apply to us because our market wasn't quite as big at the time. It's grown, but we knew all along that we were way ahead of the market, meaning that we would talk to marketing leaders about what we were doing, and they'd be like, I don't know if we really need to sell into the C-suite. Like, executive engagement was not as big of a thing as it is now. There's actually more of a market, despite AI, for what Boardroom Insiders did now than there was, 10 years ago.
Interesting. So would it be fair to say, COVID doubles your business overnight? Everybody needs data, 2 meetings to 12. I get that. But then you were starting to see, if I'm interpreting your comments correctly, a little bit of slowing growth because you couldn't control the sales process in a predictable way. The referrals you were getting were sporadic. And you were starting to see like, what's the future here? Like, if we can't predictably acquire customers, like maybe we should sell, because we can't see how this thing grows, doubles or triples again.
Yeah. As Lee would say, we don't know what our sales repeat button is.
Yeah.
So that makes it very hard to scale sales, because you hire 5 new salespeople. What do you tell them? What works? Like, we knew some things that worked, but it was really just, I think what carried us was just, we had rabid fans. People loved what we did. They saw it as a must to have once they had been using it. And so it just led to contract expansion. We did kind of a land and expand strategy. And it also led to word of mouth referrals. And really, every time someone jumped to another company, they take us with them. So we would have that old company contract, and then we get a new company contract.
So where were you at this stage
Sorry.
Yeah, no. Where were you in terms of annual recurring revenue at this stage of the journey?
We ultimately reached 5 million.
Got it.
It was fairly easy actually to get from like 3 to 5. It was really hard to get to like 1 to 2.
Yeah. And so you're at 5, and are you sort of plateauing at 5? Like
we never plateaued, but we could see it coming. And I think what we really talked about was multiples for SaaS were at an all-time high in 2021. We could see that we were struggling to generate net new demand, although we weren't struggling to grow the ARR, because that was coming from contract expansion and new customers through referral. We saw a big tech crash coming, which in fact happened right after we sold, shortly after we sold. So we were more looking a year out.
Yeah.
And Lee and I are hyper vigilant people. Like, I would say we're both kind of glass half empty. Yeah. So we were very critical. We had a very critical eye towards our own business. And even though we were growing and we were hiring and, it was going great, we knew that it was not always going to go that way. And we thought we were about a year out from some really hard times. And in fact, we would have been. We sold at the perfect time.
And so walk me through the sale process. Did you hire a banker? Did you do it yourselves? Like, what was that like?
We did hire a banker. And what happened was, I told you about my angel, Michael, and he had gone on to do these amazing things. And we got a lot of outreach from private equity firms. And I had a few meetings with them. And in April of 2021, I was in South Carolina with Lee, because I live in California, but I was visiting, working there for a week. And while I was sitting in Lee's office, I got a call from a PE firm that we had met with a couple times before. And we had shared some financials and stuff with them. And they always said, let's give it a little bit more time. And so we had just started to hire like a COO type of person, because we were kind of going gangbusters, and we knew we wanted to sell, but we were thinking like we'd started in 2021, 22. And this PE firm said, well, how's it going? And I said, well, it's good. It's good. We've got our heads down. We're working on a lot of stuff. We're growing. And they said, well, let's talk. Maybe now's the time. And I said, I don't think so. We're really going gangbusters. And he said, well, that's too bad, because I could give you a term sheet for 48 million today. And here's the thing, like Lee and I had been keeping a spreadsheet for a couple of years that had all the valuations across the top. We had no idea what kind of valuation or multiple we would get because of our kind of scalability problem. We didn't put ourselves really in the category of SaaS multiples. We thought we'll be on the low end. So we never knew. We had no idea. Well, like, could it be 10 million, 30 million, 50 million, no idea. So when they said 48 million, that was the first time somebody had put a number out there. And so I jumped out of my chair, ran out into the hallway where no one could hear me, and I called Michael. And I said, Michael, we just got, a verbal offer for 48 million. And he's like, Sharon, these clowns are full of shit. He said, they're going to, sorry for swearing. He said,
No,
they're
you're
going to
good.
dangle a number and you're going to get all excited, which I was. And he said, and then they're going to just chip away. They're going to get you down to about 20 million and you'll take it because you're exhausted. And he said, don't talk to one firm. He said, why would you think of selling just because some clown gives you a number? And I said, because I've been waiting for a number. And it's the first time I've heard one. He said, okay. He said, if you are serious about selling, you need to hire an M&A banker and do a process because you wouldn't negotiate with just one buyer. Like you need to generate competition. So I said, okay. So I hung up the phone. I went into Lee and I said, what's an M&A banker and what's a process? And Lee had been through it before. He has more of a finance background. And this was another great thing about me and Lee. Like, I'm not afraid to ask a stupid question. And he doesn't treat me like I'm stupid because he knows my genius lies elsewhere. Like he's seen it, right? So he's like, okay. He said, it's just like selling your house. He said, you shouldn't be intimidated. He said, it's like selling your house. When you sell your house, you hire a realtor. They look at your house. They tell you what's wrong with it, what you need to fix before you sell. They might help you stage it. And then they have a date when it's open for everyone to see and they generate competition to get you the best price. He said, that's an M&A banker. It's like a realtor for your business. They do the exact same thing. And he said, if we want to do this, great, but you need to run it because you have the most to gain and lose from this process. And he said, and I need to keep my eye on sales while we're doing this, because if our sales start to dip, we're toast. So that's what we did. And I'm a researcher. So I just started researching how to do this and read a lot. And then through Lee's network, we actually hired our lawyer first, which I thought was really a great way to go. We hired Morris, Manning and Martin out of Atlanta. And they do this thing, and I'm sure other law firms in M&A do this. We didn't want like a Silicon Valley one. We're like not at that level. You have to pay too much. So what they do is they do an audit of your documents, and they tell you like what is missing or what needs to be tuned up or created. And they do that for free. Under the assumption that if you do a process, they will be your firm. And the firm comes in kind of about, I don't know, a couple months in.
And Sharon, if I may interject, what was the most surprising document that they said you've got to go get that you didn't have or that you were surprised by?
I know the one that generated the most drama, and it was at the very end. We had a 3,000 square foot office in Fort Mill, South Carolina that was costing us like $6,000 a month. And we had like 28 people in there. It was very crowded. At the end, like it was half and half after COVID, half would be in each day. And I'm trying to remember. I think there was some document actually that our landlord needed from us because we told them we're going under a change of control, and they're like, well, we need to know who these people are. And I guess usually it would be some maybe small company, but the company that bought us was a public British company called EuroMoney. So they needed all this paperwork from EuroMoney before this was all happening days before we closed. And it was the biggest nightmare because I think EuroMoney wasn't quite ready to close because they were not ready to receive our whole team. Like between our team in India and in Fort Mill, we had like close to 50 people. And I don't think they were quite ready. I was getting signals of that. And so they kind of used it as a delay. Well, if we don't get this paperwork from your landlord, if we don't get this straightened out, and I got really frustrated on a call and I'm like, we're talking about 3,000 square feet. $6,000 a month, and the lease is up in July. So what's the big deal?
Yeah,
So, people will use things as leverage at, especially when things get crazy at the end of the process, to delay or, whatever, serve them in whatever way they need to.
for sure. We skipped ahead a little bit. So you hire this Atlanta-based M&A firm. They take you through and get all the documents ready. What was the sort of reaction to the marketplace, to the deal? Like, how did the market react?
With mostly silence. We got one offer. We had 3 management presentations. I mean, I don't know if your audience knows how it works, but they basically start with maybe 130 companies. Half of those will be like PE, what they call financial acquirers, and half will be strategic. And I think we were always going to be more in the strategic camp, because our true value was just how much customers loved it. Our retention was really good, deal expansion. But we weren't a huge scaling business. The scalability was kind of an issue. So they contacted all these organizations, and what happens next is some will ask for they call it a management presentation, but it's basically just a meeting with me and my partner. So we did 3 of those, and we got one offer, but nobody knew that at the time. Like, you try to make them think that you have multiple offers, or you have more activity than maybe you do, and we had no idea what we would get, but in the end we got one.
And Sharon, what is, walk us inside your head at that moment. You do all the work to get the documents prepped. This guy throws out a $48 million valuation on a $5 million business. You must have been disappointed by the reaction.
Oh yeah, I was very disappointed. And the first offer that EuroMoney made was a very strange offer. It said, we will pay you 17 to 20 million in cash. And I thought, well, who's going to say, oh, I'll take the 17? Like, I don't know. And even our banker was like, I've never seen anything like this. I don't know why they would do that. And I'm sure he talked to them about it, but the bankers are also, they just want to get the deal done. And this was not a huge deal for them. So I was starting to get the feeling towards the end, like they just want us off their plate. Mm-hmm. Because the threshold for, I think, an increase in their percentage was like 30. So they didn't have much incentive to take us from 20 to 30 or 20 to 25. Excuse me. They just wanted to get it done to get their commission, because if there's no deal, no commission, right? So I was very disappointed with that offer. And so I called Michael, and he's my hype man. He just has no doubts that things are going to go great. And he said, well, what do you want? I said, oh, God, I want 30. Like, the bankers had told us they thought they could get us 30 to 50. And then we get this low offer. And so I said, I want 30. And I said, but man, that's a lot more to ask for. And he's like, go ask for it. Go do it. So he hyped me up. And this is where keeping your ears open throughout the whole process. And I'm talking keeping your ears open. Some of the most valuable time for me was when everybody's getting on a Zoom and you hear side conversations. And I heard 2 side conversations that made me go, The first one was when somebody said, like, well, we have the buyer said, well, we have these 4 brands under one new parent company. We're going to combine them together under one new parent company. And Boardroom Insiders is like the missing piece that we needed. And I thought, wow, that's real strategic value there, right? And then the second conversation I heard was my bankers people talking while we got on a meeting. And they said, oh yeah, I said, oh, you guys must be busy. And they're like, yeah, we're working on this $120 million deal. I'm like, oh, well, their focus has got to be on that deal, not on mine. And so I thought, we have great strategic value to EuroMoney because we're the missing piece in this product that they're probably going to build and sell. And our bankers want us off their plate, so they're not going to fight for an extra 10 million. So I need to put this all in writing because I don't want the banker just going and saying, yeah, I wanted him to tell them why. So I wrote an email. I'm better in writing. I wrote an email to the banker and I said, EuroMoney has said that we are the strategic linchpin in this product suite that they're building. So we deserve more. It's not a matter of a multiple of revenue. It's a matter of strategic value. And I said, I would like 30 minimum, and I would like you to go and tell them exactly what I have written in this email. Exactly. And so he did. And then in the meantime, I called Lee and I said, what are we willing to walk away? And he said, let's go with 25. I mean, I told him, just as he said to me, like, you have the most to win and lose. You have to run this. I said to him, I turned the tables on him and I said, this number has to work for you. I have more equity than you do. So whatever number we accept, it has to work for you. And so if it's 25, great. And so we agreed it was 25 and they came back with 25 and then we accepted.
So you put the 25 number in that email to them. No, you put 30.
I put a 30, yeah.
30, okay. But it got them up from, quote, 17 to 20 all the way up to 25.
Which is hugely consequential for us as founders, hugely.
Sure. What about the guy who originally offered you 48? Was he in the mix?
Oh, that's hilarious. So people shouldn't get so emotional in business. I was kind of surprised. They were angry that we ran a process. They thought we should have just gone straight to them. Of course, that would be in their interest, but not in ours. So they were annoyed that we were running a process. And so I told our banker, I said, these people are what got this all rolling. So you should have them on your list. They declined. They declined to even have a conversation with us. So either their priorities changed. I don't know what happened there, but we all thought that was very funny. The firm that actually sparked the whole process declined to learn more.
Yeah, I wonder what that says about their intention to close or their willingness or ability to close.
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the things that I did that was so helpful is once we had a short list of bankers, I think we were talking to 4 or 5. I asked for 3 references from each of them. And the criteria was a business of our similar size and or in our industry that they had sold in the last 2 years. And so I talked to maybe 10, 12 entrepreneurs, and it took a lot of time, but it was so worth it. And Lee didn't have time to do it because he was off shoring up sales. And so I just took copious notes and then I shared with him everything. And I learned a ton from that. And part of what I learned, to the question you were asking, is they said, I tried to just negotiate this myself with one firm that came a calling, and it did not end well. And they said the reason why I did that is because I didn't want to pay the commission. I thought 4% was too much. And most of them crashed and burned. And then the problem is you have to kind of go dark for about 18 months before you go back out to the market. Not really sure why, but that's what people do. And so that was a hard lesson learned. And even though I felt that our bankers' interests kind of diverged at the end when they were just trying to get us closed and we wanted more money, they did a fantastic job. And what they get paid for is getting that deal over the finish line, because there are so many ways it can fall apart and time is not on your side. They push it fast and hard because, as our banker on the last, we were supposed to close and it kept getting delayed, and he got really frustrated and really chewed out the M&A team at our buyer in a way that was quite unprofessional. But he's a New Yorker. He's like, his exact words was, we have had our thumbs up our asses since mid-December, guys. Like, and by this time it was like January 15th. And he's like, there could be a stock market crash, a terrorist attack tomorrow. Every day that goes by is a risk. And so we ended up closing 2 days later because he pushed so hard. And that's what they do. And they say that so I don't have to, because that could be a problem. So, we all had this moment where we're like, oh man, Robert is kind of crazy, but let's turn our attention, like, how can we get this closed? But that's
So
their
he
job.
got to be the bad cop, basically.
He got to be the bad cop. And also the other thing that they did come to find out later is they shield you from a lot of drama that goes on behind the scenes, some of which you never find out about. So we were really trying to wrap this thing up sometime in December 2021, early January. And well, what happens during the holidays when you have big enterprise deals on the table? Well, they get delayed, they don't close. And we were dealing with like an IBM deal that had to go through this extensive security review. I mean, we're a company of 50 people, and IBM is like stress testing our security. And so it just took forever. The deals were delayed. And so, I mean, I was in Jamaica because you plan these trips years ahead. I was there for a 50th birthday, and it kept getting delayed, right? And so finally, I talked to Robert while I was in Jamaica, like walking around on the beach, and he said, okay, I didn't want to tell you what happened until it was resolved, but you had all these big deals. They weren't closing. And one of them, like two of them finally closed, like December 21st or something. And he said, basically the process has been on hold for like 10 days. And I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to be stressed out, but now we're good to go. So they shield you from the drama, which is good because you imagine you're losing sleep. I mean, we knew how important those deals were, but we were never told, like, you may not close if you don't get those deals done.
And EuroMoney, the acquirer, was the only one that came forward with a letter of intent. Were you able to carry on the facade that there were other buyers at the table? Like, did they eventually catch wind of the fact that they were the only game in town?
I don't think they ever did, because you sign an LOI once you accept the offer. Once we agreed on that $25 million in cash, you sign something that says you will not negotiate with another buyer for I think it's maybe 90 days. And then we were trying to close very quickly. And so then we renewed that letter. And that protects the buyer from any shenanigans that, you might be negotiating another deal at the same time. And that's another thing the banker does, is it keeps it very professional and everything's above board. There's a process that you go through, and there's norms that you follow. And so, yeah, we had signed that. And as far as they knew, there could have been other people waiting the wings if it fell apart, but there wasn't.
How did they structure the $25 million? Was it all cash at closing? Did you have an earnout? How was that?
It was all cash at close. And this is another place Michael was helpful, because I was annoyed at the valuation. I wanted more. And Michael's like, cash. He said, this is an all cash deal, Sharon. He's like, getting all that cash is worth taking a haircut in the valuation, because that $48 million deal, first of all, we know it probably would have been chipped down. Even if they got it to 30, you're signing up to run the company for 3 years probably, and you're going to have all these impositions of goals that you may not meet. And he said, you have to be happy with the money you get up front, because it's possible that you may not see anything else. So 25 million in cash, I see now that was a much better deal than getting, even above 30, but with a lot of ambiguous earnouts or stock or things that may not actually deliver.
Sounds like a massive multiple to me, especially these days. Maybe 2021, it was a very frothy market for kind of technology companies, but circa 2026, 5 times revenue sounds like a pretty incredible outcome. If I say so.
Yeah, I mean, remember, I always didn't know what I didn't know, and so I'm like, well, this is not enough, and Michael's like, girl, take it. It's 25 in cash. They offered you 20 tops and you got an extra 5. Like, you should take it.
Yeah, yeah. And so what was life like? Like walk me through because I understand there's been an interesting sort of turn of events. This EuroMoney itself was acquired. I mean, walk us through that journey.
So, about 9 months after our deal, and I don't even think I can explain this because it was very complicated. EuroMoney basically took itself private, but I think what they did is they split up. They had a lot of companies, a big portfolio of companies. And so they took, I think, half of them like were sold to private equity, and then another half were sold, but the company that bought it spun up like a new PE firm to capture these assets. And that's the one that Boardroom Insiders was under. And Boardroom Insiders was packaged up with four other brands, SaaS people intelligence brands. That's what they called it. And it was renamed Altrata. So Altrata was the parent company, but the PE firm was called Delinean. So there was a lot of really complicated like financial machinations going on that I didn't totally understand. All I knew is like BI is part of Altrata now. There's still the Boardroom Insiders brand, and the product is pretty much the same as it was, but it's owned by Altrata. And the
And are you still
stated
at the company at the time, Sharon? Like, are you
no,
employed? You've now left completely.
no, I left, but I kept stalking the company because I mean I love that company. I was
It's
disappointed
your
that I didn't
baby.
continue, right? So I would
Did did EuroMoney give you an option to stay?
no, no. And they told us at the very last minute that they didn't want us to stay. I mean, it made sense. By that time, like we went for so many years without paying ourselves. By that time, we were paying ourselves like 350 a year. So it made
Mhm.
sense for them to get rid of us. That let's give them like 700K right there, right? So and so they got rid of us right away, but I was stalking the company. Like I'd read all their earnings call transcripts and like what are they doing to see if they mentioned us. And I found out a lot of good stuff by doing that. That was interesting. But they, yeah, they spun it off to PE, and I thought, oh no, because I'm not a big fan. What are they going to do? But then it went on for a couple of years, and nothing happened. So I thought, well, maybe it'll be fine because I knew my team was extremely happy under EuroMoney. They loved the leadership there. They were doing great. But then when PE took it over, things started to deteriorate. But it was still going along. Like they had no leadership. They were just it was just basically the sales lead and the product lead running the company. And then in July, late July of last year, I got a bunch of texts one morning. Woke up to a bunch of texts, and they had just announced they were shutting it down with no warning, and they laid off most of the team that same day. And then I contacted them and asked them if I could buy it back. And we had a conversation in which they did not seem to know what the name of the company was or what the revenue was. Like they didn't seem to know anything about the company. So I made them several offers to buy it back. With Michael's help, I offered to buy the whole of Altrata, and they turned me down. So I had to decide whether I was willing to rebuild it, which meant create a completely new brand without any customer contracts attached to it. Because I think Boardroom Insiders had almost 4 million in revenue. Like it had gone down, but it's because they didn't improve the product for 5 years.
Mhm.
So I ended up deciding to restart it, and only because I had two of the strongest leaders in the company who had been with the company for a very long time and had run it continuously join me as co-founders. I couldn't do it without them.
Okay, so I've got so many questions about that because here you are, you sell for an outlandish amount of money by any definition of that. You're 5 times revenue. This was your baby. You get out. Most people have a 3-year earn out or some sort of equity roll. You get cash at closing, and you're still stalking, in your own words, the company after cashing this check. Why aren't you on the beach?
because I'm a crazy person. I, I caught the car basically, right? And I really
Yeah.
needed to. I mean, my finances were kind of in a shambles after. I mean, I know I was making a lot of money at that point, but I had not been making money for a long time. I live in a house that's over 100 years old in the middle of San Francisco, and it was like battered from kids and dogs and everything. And I needed to put money into my house. I needed to pay off a home equity line of credit. Um, yeah, I hadn't saved for retirement in 10 years. So the exit, and my partner really wanted an exit. He was kind of tired. And so we exited, did well, and you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know how I would feel. Um, I tried playing pickleball with some girlfriends who do that on the weekdays, and that was fun. I enjoyed it. But I don't know. I just didn't love it. I wasn't great at relaxing. And my husband and I tried to go to a couple of really fancy places that we've never been able to afford before. Um, and I didn't love it. I didn't like the people there. They were not very, like, they weren't my people. You're sitting having a drink by the fire pit and you hear the conversations, and I'm just like, don't love this. So I tried to figure out what do I want to do. And so I started producing content for bootstrappers, mainly bootstrapping entrepreneurs. And at first I didn't know that would be, I didn't know what I knew. I didn't know that I knew anything that other people didn't know. I didn't know that I had anything to offer that would be helpful. But what happened is after I exited, people started finding me and asking me all sorts of questions. And I just assumed everybody knew all this stuff. Like, why would this be helpful? But the reaction I got was like, oh my God, this is so valuable. Thank you so much. And so I wrote a book. I started making TikToks, and I shared all my numbers on TikTok. That really blew up. And I realized not everyone knows this stuff. And there's a lot of gatekeeping and there's a lot of jargon. And yes, you can look stuff up online, but here's what's happened to like the open web. And I don't know, it could happen with AI too. You look up something about exit, and every firm on the first 3 pages of Google, they're law firms, they're M&A firms, and you're not really getting the true story from people who've done it, right? You can get that on TikTok now, but there just weren't a lot of people making content then, like building in public kind of stuff, exiting in public kind of stuff. That was, in 2022. And so I started doing that. I was really encouraged by my Gen Z sons who are like, look, people just want unfiltered truth. So I started sharing the unfiltered truth, and that took off. And my book was I'm just unfiltered in general. And so it, it just was the right time for that kind of content. Now, but I worried looking ahead because I am this glass half empty person. I'm like, you know what? I can probably pull off this being like an entrepreneurial influencer for about 3 to 4 years. And then what's going to happen after 4 years is everything's going to change. And if I'm not building, my advice is not going to be relevant anymore. And so, well, what dropped in my lap? An opportunity to build another company. And now I'm hands-on with all the AI tools, and I'm seeing, the hype, like what people say versus what the reality is around all of that.
And this is the new company, Executive IQ.
Yes. So
Awesome.
we founded the company at the beginning of October. We launched our product early February, and last week we got our first customer in the product. So it has been
Congrats.
built, like standing up a company and a product in like 4 to 5 months has been crazy, but very fun.
Well, congrats. That's amazing. And are you up for a quick lightning round of questions before I let you go?
Yeah.
Okay. So with the lightning round, we're just looking for a shorter answer, but take as
I'll
long
try.
as you want. What's one thing you wish you'd known about the process of exiting a company that you now know today?
I wish I'd been able to see the signs and been realistic about your interests, like diverging with your bankers. I wish I'd been a
Mm.
little bit more clear-eyed and demanded a little bit more of our banker. I mean, again, I was very happy with them, but yeah, you have to be very clear-eyed about that.
What was the emotional high of selling your company? The best you felt?
Uh, just when it happened, when the wire came through. I mean, when the wire came through, I was on a plane, and I write about this in my book. It was surreal because it kept getting delayed, delayed, delayed. I'd been in Fort Mill for 2 weeks. I'm like, I got to go home. Like, I was so homesick, pining for my family. And so I'm like, I'm going home. I guess we'll just close it from home. And it closed while I was on the plane. And my husband sent me, we had a lot of credit card bills because we were redoing our house at the time. Like, we couldn't wait anymore. And so we owed, like, we had a lot of debt. So while I was on the plane, he just paid it all off, and he showed me a $10 million deposit into my account because they hold a little bit of the money aside. You don't get all of it for like a year. There's like an escrow thing in case you were fraudulent in any way. But getting that wire screenshot and all the credit cards got paid off, it was like just such a huge weight off my shoulders.
I would imagine. What about the emotional low?
I think the emotional low was just like maybe, um, they gave us a consulting agreement as founders, and they said up to 3 months, 20 hours a week. But the reality was, is we were completely out in about 3 weeks. And it just, the abruptness of it. And I think it was my birthday. My last day was my birthday. And it was just like such a, it's like running into a brick wall. You're going, going, going for years, and then you just slam into a wall. And I remember I was crying to my husband. I'm like, maybe this was a mistake. And he's like, are you kidding me? But you can't say that to anyone else in your life because they're like, okay, you just got millions of dollars and you're whining. No one wants to hear a millionaire whine. And so I had to deal with that within my own family. And I took it as like a rejection that they didn't want me to continue. And I wasn't being smart saying they just took 700,000 out of their obligations by getting rid of you and Lee.
Sure. But it did feel like you were rejected in some level.
Yeah,
Said,
it just was, and you just never know how you're going to feel. Like, I thought I was just going to be elated for, the rest of time. And, but if you've been doing this for so many years and then it just stops, it kind of shocks you. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I remember I wandered around the neighborhood, like going in and out of stores. I went to lunch by myself. I was like,
who's the crazy lady who keeps coming into the store and not buying anything?
Well, yeah, because I think I'm kind of an introvert, and being so busy all those years, it gave me, permission to just like run into stores, grab something, and not talk to anybody and not linger. And suddenly I'm like, I talked to this guy in the furniture store for like a half an hour, and I was having all these just nice conversations that I've never had. And because I have time, I'm not feeling this pressure, like, got to get home, got to get home, got to get back online. And it was just weird. It was very weird.
What'd you buy yourself as a trophy to commemorate the win?
We bought an electric car.
What'd you
Brand
buy?
new, a Volkswagen ID4, which I love. I absolutely love it.
Nice.
And, just paid all cash. It was great.
And every time you get in it, you remember the win and the boardroom story, I guess,
Yeah.
the journey that you went through. If people wanted to reach out on social, you've got Scaling with Soul is the book, the Substack at the same name.
Yes.
Executive IQ is the new company that people can check
Yes.
out. But what about social? Is there a way for folks to reach you on social media if they want to reach out and say hi?
Yeah, I love connecting with people on LinkedIn and following their entrepreneurial journey as well. I mean, now that I'm building, I'm learning as much from other people as they might learn from me. And also, I put my more unfiltered self on TikTok. Not everyone's on TikTok, but if you are on TikTok, you can follow me at Sharon Gillenwater and watch out because I have a lot of imposters.
Okay, we'll put your TikTok credentials, so to speak, LinkedIn, the book, Scaling with Soul, the Substack, Executive IQ, all in the show notes at builttosell.com. Sharon, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. It was fun.